behind the scenes that you know nothing about. And I appreciate all that you've done. You know, for many, many years as I've traveled, I used to be a collector of embarrassing moments. I'd ask pastors, you know, what's the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to you? And they'd tell me. And I love collecting embarrassing moments because I get to tell them everywhere I go. You know, if you tell me your most embarrassing moment, I'll make sure everybody in the world knows about it. But one of my favorite happened to a friend of mine in Sumter, South Carolina, a pastor. He was a big man, weighed about 350 pounds. But one night he was taking a shower. Now, what could go wrong in the shower? Well, he slipped on a bar of soap. And when he slipped, he fell backwards, and it was like a 7.1 earthquake when he landed. The whole house shook. But when he was falling, his arms went in the air, and his feet went in the air, and it was a perfect bullseye shot. His big toe went right up the faucet. It went in with so much force, it was jammed up in there. It passed by the little knuckle, you know, and it was jammed up in the faucet. And of course his wife heard the noise when he fell, and she ran to the bathroom door standing out in the hallway. She said, honey, you all right? What would you say if you were sitting there with your toe stuck in the faucet? Yeah, I'm fine. She went away. And he tried to get it out and could not. The more he pulled, the more it hurt. It was beginning to swell. About 5 minutes passed, and he could not get his toe out. So finally he called his wife. Honey, can you get in the bathroom? Well, she had to find the key and unlock the bathroom door. And when she unlocked the door and walked in, she saw her husband. Well, by this time he wanted sympathy and compassion. But when she saw her husband lying on his back with his toe stuck into the faucet, she didn't have sympathy or compassion. She just died laughing at him. They worked together trying to get his toe out of the faucet, but they could not do it. He said, life's most embarrassing moment to me was when we called the fire department. And in Sumter, South Carolina, these two paramedics came in. And when they came in, they didn't have sympathy or compassion either. They just died laughing at the preacher, well-known pastor in Sumter, South Carolina, with his toe stuck in the faucet. They had to saw it off, but not the toe of the faucet. He said that was his most embarrassing moment. I had an embarrassing moment. Would you like to know what my most embarrassing moment was? It happened when I was fishing. What could go wrong fishing? Well, we were fishing in North Mississippi, and I was fishing with Mr. Mankey, and we were crappie fishing. Now, we would ease up to a tree and drop our lines beside the tree to catch the crappie. I was sitting in the front of the boat with him. He was sitting in the bow. I was sitting on the first seat. But the problem was I was sitting where the battery was that ran the trolling motor. And there was battery acid on the seat. Battery acid on the battery, and I was leaning up against it, and I was sitting in it. I got this tingling feeling. You know what it feels like when your foot goes to sleep, that tingling sensation? Or when your hand goes to sleep, that tingling sensation? Well, I've never had this part of my body go to sleep before. And I was sitting there, and there's just tingling, 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 and I thought, wow, this is odd. I'd sit on the right side for a while and I'd fish, you know, until I couldn't take it anymore, and I'd sit on the left side. It just finally turned to burning. I mean, just outright burning. It is absolutely what battery acid can do to you. And of course, I had no idea it was battery acid. I didn't know what was wrong with me. But I'm not going to say anything about it. It's rather embarrassing. So I just sat there. And after a while, I was just in agony. He said, Steve, you all right? And I fished like that for hours. We hadn't done well fishing. He said, Steve, you ready to go? I'd been ready to go for a long time. We went back across the lake where we had launched the boat, and I stood up and my blue jeans disintegrated. It's amazing what battery acid does. It ate through the pockets on both sides of my blue jeans. It ate through the second layer on both sides of my blue jeans. There were no blue jeans. Third layer was gone too. That was an embarrassing moment. I was at Pensacola Christian College. We were sharing embarrassing moments, and Buzz Baker shared an embarrassing moment that happened to a Bible college in Pennsylvania. I think it's one of the most unique I've heard. They were doing the Passion Play. It's about Easter time coming up at the end of this month. They were doing the Passion Play, and had done it for years and years. This was the third showing this particular year, where over 1,200 people there to view it. Everything was going extremely well. Jesus was in the garden praying, and the soldiers were approaching him. The first soldier, who walked out on the stage, tripped and fell flat on his face. But as he was falling, he threw the sword he was carrying away from him. But he threw it in the direction of Jesus, who did not see it coming because his eyes were closed in prayer. The sword went right through Jesus' thigh, to which he replied, and immediately they closed the curtain, for you realize this is no longer an accurate account of the Passion Week of Christ. Well, backstage, they're trying to figure out what to do. Immediately, they took the guy to the hospital. They did not pull the sword out for fear of what that would do. But backstage, they're thinking, should we dismiss the people? One of the guys who had been with the stage crew for a number of years said, no, I know the lines. If you dress me up, I believe I can finish the production. So they told the congregation what they were going to attempt to do. And within 20 minutes, they had the curtains opened again with a new stand-in Jesus. Jesus was in the garden praying. Soldiers were approaching him. The first soldier was not carrying the sword. By this time, his was at the hospital. Jesus knew every line. Jesus knew every position. He did a masterful job pulling off this production. And everything went extremely well until it came time for the ascension. And that's when Jesus was lifted up off the platform above the curtains to depict his ascension into the clouds. Everything had been carefully weighed and balanced with ropes, sandbags, and pulleys. But no one had considered the weight difference between the Jesus who's at the hospital and the Jesus who's now on stage. All Jesus had to do was lift up off the platform, and the weight would be transferred to the sandbag, and slowly he'd be lifted up. So when Jesus gave his final instructions to his disciples, he lifted up off the platform, and sure enough, he went up. He went up about 3.5 to 4 feet and stopped in midair. And Jesus was just hanging there. Everybody in the crowd was just watching him. And then slowly he came back down. And when he came back down, his feet touched the platform. And I will say this regarding the guy. He was a man who could think on his feet. For when his feet touched the platform, he said, one more thing before I leave, fellas. All the while, he's trying to think, how am I going to get out of this? Well, he came to the conclusion that what he needed to do was back up and take a running start and jump. Or if he could jump high enough, maybe he could get over the threshold of that which had held him down. So he repeated his instructions to his disciples again. He backed up, he ran forward, and he leaped into the air. But backstage, they had figured out another solution. And when he jumped in the air, they pulled on the rope. And in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, he shot out of there. He went up so fast, so hard, he hit his head on the pulley at the top. You can hear the rigging and rafters shake throughout the building. But the last thing that can be remembered by those watching the production that day, 2 sandals came falling from the sky and landed on the platform. Embarrassing moments for the production crew. You know, it's been a wonderful week. I've enjoyed being